Giving thanks, giving thanks, giving thanks, giving thanks. Just hearing that vibration in the back, it's about love. We'd like to uh, share our Kaba Hotep greetings to our listeners, our viewers who are here with African Queen of the Warriors Rising. I am Mr. Dr. Tinsera. My gracious Lord, well beyond measure, omnipotent, omnipresent, powerful Christian are here with I and I. And we pause for a moment because we just would like to keep that energetics vibration in the heights in all ways, Ma'at. We always start with Amasun Banter, Sauksu Emekran Banter, Awura Maketi Faherura, really vibing on the energetics of giving thanks, giving thanks, giving thanks, giving thanks, giving thanks. And for those persons that are hearing an additional voice, we're making sure that it's coming through with word, sound, power, and strength. Of we give thanks and praise to the one most high. We live each day daily for the one most divine, and we shall do it tomorrow, just as we do it today. My sistren, my royal, regal, ever powerful, ma'atical, truth, justice, order, reciprocity, balance, divine righteousness, and harmony, African Queen Mother Warriors, please, please, I most humbly request you bring voice, sound, and strength to this versation. We're just sitting in the area in the countryside, having this versation, bringing in that energy. Whoop, whoop. Give thanks.
Okay, let me go first because I've unmuted. Peaceful greetings to all. Peaceful greetings to my sisters, my African Queen Mother Warrior sisters, those who are here and those who are with us but not necessarily on camera. It's a gift. It's an honor to be with ones this morning. Peace. I should say my name. I'm Sis Doctor. I should know who I am. That would be a really good idea. I'm Sis Doctor.
Warm greetings to all. It's great to be back again with my sister queens. African Queen Mother Warriors. It's a glorious day, and I'm really looking forward to our conversation, our versation. I have to get the language right on strategic hijacking of our movements. There's a lot to say here, and really, really keen for this versation to continue. And I am Sister Esther.
Okay, I'll be the somewhat animated one because the whole idea is that we're in 3 different locations geographically, supposedly, and we're bringing into the oneness amongst the 3 of us, which represent millions of African Queen Mother Warriors. Notice how I say that as our illustrious sister doctor has shared, may not be here with us right now physically in this particular realm in this studio. However, the intention is to keep the energetics as a continuum, that we do not lose our strength, our respect, our disciplined and strategic nature of interaction so that we go across transcultural spaces. Some people like to use intersectionality. All of that, we're able to use this platform to be able to speak truth to power in a variety of ways. There's been a number of convenings, activities. So today, specifically, as we're opening up 2025 in this opening month of January, African Queen Mother Warriors Rising, this particular series, which is a regular, right, is for us to be able to use platforms like this to really navigate through various versations, various themes, with the highlight for today, again, something that will be expanded very eloquently, very diplomatically. I'm going to keep coming back. Some persons like to say diplomatically. Yeah, well, but strategic, I hope you know where this is going. Strategic hijacking of our movements, and then looking at that reparations, reparatory justice, global movement, the momentum surrounding that, and also just highlighting some of the realities that African women experience, of which each of us are quite familiar with firsthand experience, and also just navigating through some of our future actions. Some persons may refer to it as African futurism or Afrofuturism, or more accurately for us, we say Afrafuturism. Why? Because we're speaking of the soul and the flesh of light of us, right? Not just the Roman Greco secular element of 12 million square miles of a continent of which we're all rooted and grounded within. So with that, I would be so pleased to embrace my sister who desired to open up some of that vibration. In some of our preparation for today, we had a really powerful reasoning just on how we look at these different movements and some of the inquiries that have taken place, because there have been, convenings from the United Nations level, there have been convenings from the African Union level, there have been convenings within CARICOM, within other Caribbean-based networks, inclusive of, but not limited to, the Caribbean Pan-African Network, CARICOM Reparations Commission, the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States, the Latin American Caribbean Economic Commission. This list is long. And many times when these convenings happen and these regional gatherings transpire, for example, what took place in December of 2024 in Barbados with the Permanent Forum for People of African Descent, UN-based, hosting a regional convening. Many of the outcomes, many of us are still, we can look at certain reports that are posted, the more general reports that are posted on their respective websites. However, there's a little more depth to that. And we're looking for the depth, the inclusivity, and the authenticity of areas of social justice and balance. Did I say that delicately? I figured I'd get a laugh for that one.
African
Right.
Queen Mother Warrior, that was excellent. I would want to just give a disclaimer here, perhaps. I don't know. I can't promise to be diplomatic. I can't, in all honesty, say that I will be diplomatic. What I will do is I will speak my truth as an African woman. And it may not be considered to be polite or diplomatic, but actually, as we are at risk and increasingly vulnerable, I would like to set aside the idea of diplomacy in favor of survival, and more than that, I'd like us to thrive. I'd like us to be powerful and effective and resume our position. And so what I'd like to contribute, and I wrote a couple of notes because when I was thinking about being with ones today, I got this rush of data on this trod that I am on as an activist, as an African woman. I have collected a lot of data, and some of it resides within my DNA now and in my consciousness, but I'm also a researcher, so I have things documented, and I have pictures, and I have what they call receipts. Receipts. So, yeah, right. So when I speak, I don't speak of notions, I speak based on facts. And some of those facts and spaces where the knowledge has come from are rooted in ancestry, but also in my essence, because I'm a spirit and manifest as a African woman. So I don't want to deny any part of me. So the first thing I wanted to do is to acknowledge that we are here on divine time. Sometimes people think, you know, well, they said they were going to be there at 1/4 past, 1/2 past, 10 to. We are here on divine time. We do the ritual we are supposed to do so that we are ready to do the work that we have to do. When we come before ones, we want to be ready so we don't waste anyone's time. This requires from me, and I know from us, courage and confidence to speak as African women in a movement that is dominated to a great deal by men. Men with egos that it is a very challenging thing for us to even speak of. Because depending on where we reside, we can become vulnerable. And what happens then is violence against us. So people will be speaking a narrative of reparatory justice, but the behavior and the leadership behavior in particular needs to be examined. So when it is that you have a movement that deals with the African family, and African women are supposed to be central to that, but African women are marginalized, this is a suspicious place. This is a dangerous place. This is not my article. There is no balance. And so some of us dare to challenge that. And we're not challenging it based on an individual. We are challenging it because we are working to save the African family and the planet. That is why. And I have to say, me now look no friend in this year something, because this is a dangerous time. And often African women are silenced or expected to be in positions that are have us subservient rather than as partners, which is how it should be. So I am just going to share a little bit of my story, and then hopefully we can have a conversation around what needs to be done to bring the balance back, because whatever's going on now isn't working. And we have had, in more recent times, 10 years, a whole decade, and the leadership that it seems to have had formed would, in my humble opinion, not have been as effective as maybe it could be, simply because the African woman's voice has been silenced, or in part, I should say. So I have been on this trod for some considerable years. I am not 2 mornings. And I am called to this trod because my spirit says we have to join together to protect the African family and do whatever is necessary in the light, in the dark, at home and abroad. Therefore, my view is not myopic. I'm not a regional being. I'm a global spiritual being. And I fear no foe, because you cannot lose your life before the time. However, there is a consequence to the trod that I have been given. That includes my association with what I will call at this point a den of demons. Yes, I am not trying to be diplomatic. A den of demons, and demons who are very eloquent and charismatic and powerful and threatening on occasion, and have networks that go beyond the geographical space that I enter and we enter. This attempt to silence the African woman goes beyond nation states, and it goes beyond academic disciplines, and it goes beyond class. It goes beyond colorism. It goes beyond a number of things, and it has established itself as being a new movement without recognition of the founding mothers and fathers of the movement. So in actual fact, it's being hijacked by people who have been quite sophisticated and strategic in maneuvering around what the narrative is and who hears the narrative and which audiences they can be in and who will be given privilege to enter and who will not and whose name will be discredited and so on and so forth. This is violence. And I speak from experience and I have the receipts. One of the things is on my journey, I have looked at models of this and models of that and models of the other. And when the model doesn't work, we have to interrogate the model. If it's not working, we have to stop doing it and do something else. And that can make you unpopular. So some years ago, I remember in this, this African liberation trod, becoming aware of a model being touted. And I think I know something about the origins of that model because of the places I used to inhabit. I don't inhabit them anymore because of things I won't go into in this particular broadcast. But they are written and documented and available for people to see and to test. And out of this discussion or this pronouncement or this presentation came 10 points, a 10-point approach, a 10-point model. And I was there when it was being presented, and I, with my bright self, decided to ask a question as we were being invited to ask questions. And I have done this on occasion. And on occasion, people have decided not to respond to me. But my question is echoed by other men and women, not just me, not just women. Men and women are asking the question, is this model the appropriate model? Do we need to look at it? Why are we holding so tightly to something that might not be adequate? What is the consequence of challenging it? I am interested in having that discussion because when I asked the question, it was because I didn't feel that there was spirituality or any of that aspect or other perspectives in it. And then on the trot, I went to a summit in New York. And that's where the African Queen Mother Warriors were formed because it was raised again. And once again, the African woman was being silenced. My particular experience that was witnessed was that they turned the mic off, basically publicly demonstrating their power over technology. My question, though, is, do they have power over spirit? Do they have power over the African woman that brings forth the African family? Do they fully understand the complexities of humanity and saving the world? Or is this just an academic project? That's my question. I don't know if anyone has the answer. I have a lot of questions.
Well, I think it's important that you frame it in that regard, and I really wish to open sacred space most honorably. And remember, we're saying honorably, not honorable. Honorable. Yeah. REBEL for those that need clarification. How about that there?
BEL.
Yeah. African Queen Mother Warrior, Sister Esther.
Wow, what a powerful introduction, Sister Dr. Sandra, and really setting the context and context, the con, which is in the text, yeah? Because this plan that is being promoted as being the voice of the people of the Caribbean is a fallacy, it's a myth, because the peoples of the Caribbean, in particular, were not involved in shaping the plan. The plan was developed, it was written, it was presented to the public, as the plan for the Caribbean. And one of the things that I've been very aware of is how there is also a falsehood that corruption, nepotism, state terrorism doesn't exist in the Caribbean. It's interesting how when these terms come up, it's always perceived to be an African thing, an African continental thing, but somehow that doesn't happen in the Caribbean region. And I just want to commend both of you, African Queen Mother Warriors, for having the courage, which is what we spoke about in the beginning, to voice these truths and facts. Because I know there are consequences for people who try to do so in the region. And there have been consequences for each and every one of us. And different forms of silencing, marginalization, economic deprivation, threats, subterfuge, and all manner of experiences that we've had to endure just for actually raising these critical questions on behalf of the African family, which we are entitled to do. And this is not just about us saving ourselves as the African family, it's also about saving our world, our planet. But it's also our mother earth, our motherland, wherever we are. And there's a lot at stake. So we have to have that courage to actually speak this reality and open up a public space for discourse and reasoning and analysis and critical thinking where it's okay to ask these questions. Because a lot is at stake, and what we are actually seeing is a hijacking of our movements for repair or reparations. And this means that our movements are being taken control of, they're being co-opted, there is a kind of narrowing of the public space and points for critical engagement in raising our voices. And it is very, very, very destructive. And part of what I think we need to also emphasize is that however we conceptualize and articulate what repair means and looks like, it's not just that ultimate vision or the end goal. The how we get to that end goal is equally vital. And if we are trying to get to that end goal by standing on the heads of the majority of our people, and including our African Queen Mother Warriors, our women folk, who are doing a lot of the labor in actually trying to keep our families together as part of our own resistance to the continuing Ma'angamizi. The destruction, they attempt to destroy us as a human reality. And destruction is not just about physically exterminating all of us, but when our culture is not, visible, when our spiritual forms, when the way that we engage and commune with our ancestors is not central, when we're utilizing Eurocentric frameworks and norms and terminologies and framings of even the value, the obscene framings of the value of our African personhood and the financialization of that, and that reductionist approach, which is so anti-African. And I feel that we are charged with a special responsibility to actually speak these truths and help our people navigate this arena, and to also amplify their voices where there are consequences for many that prevent them from doing so. So I really welcome this platform to elaborate further on how our movement for repair, which is a global movement, it's not a regional movement, because as African people, our bloodlines have populated the earth. They are through all peoples. Our lineages are transnational. They cannot just be reduced to the Caribbean, the African continent, the so-called Americas or Abya Europe or anywhere else. And this is part of the fallacy of how a lot of the reparations discourse is separating out our people. And therefore it means that we cannot win because we're dealing with superpowers. Geopolitically, superpowers, will not have the power to enforce our will as a people around reparatory justice if we continue to take these anti-African, anti-human approaches to even narrating what the harms are that have been done to us. And the leadership in this question matters. And I find it very, very troubling that some of the videos that are coming out of the region, in particular, Caribbean region I'm talking about, where's the women? Where are the women? How can we have platforms where it's predominantly men and where there is a woman, she's in a very kind of minimal role, just in terms of chairing a discussion, and all the spokespersons are men? What's going on here? How is this allowed to happen? And why are more women not speaking up about this? I do accept that for many women who are grassroots or what have you, and I know it even happens to women who are part of some of the institutions in the Caribbean, including universities, etc. But I think we have to do better. We have to do better in speaking out as women and not allow ourselves to be co-opted and to be collaborators, or even worse, women of the hegemon. An analysis that somebody called Dr. June Terpstra, who I know quite well, has come up with, that really focuses on how we have women who often just stand by the hegemonic men because they themselves might be guaranteed some position of privilege or power above other women. So we need to repair our sense of affinity with other women, other sister queens, other African Queen Mother warriors. We need to ensure that we don't allow ourselves to just be that token woman who is co-signing a very destructive program of dispossession of the African family worldwide. I think we need to look at how state capture is happening around our reparations struggle. It's not just the Caribbean, but even though we may be talking about that, it's also around in terms of CARICOM states. It's also the African Union. I think we need to have a critical perspective on that as well. And the role of states in general. We need to increase our literacy around the difference between movements and states. And you can have a case where movements are so powerful that they take state power. But that is not the case with the CARICOM or the AU. Okay? We only need to look at what's happening with the Alliance of Sahel States and how the African Union and even ECOWAS have responded to that to know. So there's a lot of things that we need to look at. Beyond the state capture, there's the elite capture, the way in which resources are being hijacked and deployed to be determined and utilized by elites in a way that, again, suppresses the voices of our people from below. And of course, the movement capture, the role of philanthropic organizations who are beginning to resource reparations, activism and work. I mean, there are organizations like Open Society, who I know has been resourcing work in Africa, in the Caribbean, but we have to have a critical perspective and analysis around how this resourcing happens and what we know about when resources come into movements, how the true goals of that movement get sidelined into more palatable sort of NGO kind of programs and initiatives that create jobs. I mean, when I started out as a reparationist, I lost my job, and that's putting it politely, working for a society of lawyers racialized as Black. Now I'm seeing job posts on reparations, like Quakers, the repair campaign. I'm like, what's happening here? How comes people can now get jobs on reparations when people have literally been assassinated, had their lives taken, and had jobs, been denied jobs and work and the ability to gain, to earn a living, I should say, for this same cause within just 2 decades? What's happening here? And who are the people that are now the new leaders that are being created through these jobs and these openings and this philanthropic funding? And how is that also being co-signed by so-called leaders, and I would say misleaders, actually, coming out of the Caribbean, the wider African diaspora, who have access to state power and who are also state actors? And some of them have dual roles as being state actors and so-called civil society actors. I don't really know how that works. But these are just some of my thoughts. There's a lot happening around co-optation. There's a lot happening around the manipulation of our messaging and our narrative regarding the hijacking. And this is going to have serious consequences for our people. And even when we go to so-called, okay, let me put it this way, even when there is an economic analysis or attempts to come up with compensatory kind of figures, look at how those reports, like the Brattle Group report I can mention specifically in terms of the Caribbean and the so-called Americas, just read the reports and look at how they're quantifying harm. And how do we have a report that is meant to be trying to calculate financial reparations for African people, but it doesn't look at the foundational crimes and harms on the African continent? Doesn't take into consideration what's called non-economic loss and damage, which is, how do you quantify the loss of a life? How do you quantify the loss of sovereignty? How do you quantify the loss of our position as African women? How do we do this? And is it ethical to even try and do so? What value systems, what framework, what mindset are we embracing? I'll stop here. Those are just my thoughts on this very powerful topic.
They know not what they have done. They know not what they have done.
Well, I have a lot to think about. I'm taking very copious notes, even though this is being recorded. And I'm hoping that persons that are within an earshot of view of this particular gathering, share your commentary, and I will give a precursor. We look for critique, not negative criticism. We look for empowering commentary, nothing negative. It will not be tolerated in this realm, not this program, this podcast, this broadcast. If you're coming to facilitate elevation and upliftment of what you're hearing, share freely. Other than that, we encourage you to keep your commentary in private settings so that way the Sekhmetian energy that is present, let me give clarity, that lioness roar in action will be minimized in this public arena. With that being shared, I just would like to offer a short infomercial of a film that was done around Queens. And this is just the trailer, and it would allow for our viewing audience. We speak amongst the trees. We speak amongst nature. We embrace an opportunity to highlight the fusion of language, culture, traditional folklore, and heritage in a sacred way. We use this as an opportunity to highlight a history that is specific to freedom fighters, our women, our queens, our leaders, the backbones of our community from 1733 to 1892. So you will gather a glimpse, a vision, a flowetry, if you will, of these particular three women. Just offering us like a small moment, just a small moment of something that was done in a artistic, creative, cultural heritage, education, exploratory space, led by Sistren, brought together by Sistren, for us to be able to, and we had to use this particular type of film. It's just a short ethno-documentary on great sheroes specific to the Virgin Islands. We say Virgin Islands, us, not US anything, but Virgin Islands of the US, yes, but Virgin Island history. Each of these three women were not born here, but their blood, sweat, toil, and some of their bones are here. That's what I heard when I listened to both of you in regard to making sure that the essence of our women is universal from the center of the womb, universally integrated into everything that we're doing, whether it's a 3-point plan, a 5-year plan, a 10-point plan, a plan of any sorts. At the core, from inception, there is to be balance and harmony. And some things did start without the balance and harmony, and there were attempts to ferret things into it. However, starting on sand, I'll leave that there. I'm very grateful to hear that there are authentic recommendations on how to revise and authentically reorganize any plan of action, whether it's dealing with ceasing domestic violence, ending the crimes and terrorism against African women and girls and our families, whether it's reparatory justice, reparations. It cannot only be that we're going to create another course or another degree or another educational platform that is still inside of a very Eurocentric, colonial, capitalist, imperialist frame of referencing, and then say it's going to liberate us. It has to come from a very liberating grounding, like the foundation is to be balanced. So that's why I keep coming to that term, article. I keep referring to that truth, justice, order, reciprocity, balance, divine righteousness, and harmony, and how we bring these things together. And the braveness of which has been referenced amongst all of us here is a reflection of millions upon millions of ancestors. See, persons may just see our individual person come into a space. So they're like, oh, it's just one of them, sister. You know, little rabble rouser, maybe, yeah, we're gonna let her talk, or maybe not, we're not gonna turn it off, whatever. However, they're overlooking that when we move into these spaces, which sometimes we spend so much energy holding sacred, sanctified space, that sometimes we will just sit and we may be silent, but it's not a silence of no voice and no commentary, no desire to provide input. It's a silence right on the eve of the turbulence of Hurricane Category 10.
You better tell the people. Give thanks. Give thanks to you, African Queen Mother warriors. And Sister Queen Esther, your sharing is very stimulating, very stimulating. On this trod, I have become aware of, just to echo what African Queen Mother or it's Senator Dr. shared in that film, that women have been at the front line of peaceful and less peaceful resistance. Our resistance takes different forms. We don't have to raise our voice necessarily. We don't have to be animated necessarily. But sometimes our silence is louder than if we would speak. Because when African women get to a place where we stop speaking, you actually need to be more worried than if we were speaking. Because you can bet your bottom dollar we are planning to do something. If we see our family under threat, we are planning to do something. I was stimulated and I wrote a couple of things down. I wrote down that, there are assassination attempts that are on different platforms and different spaces and in different ways. There is a model that I am beginning to uncover in terms of what happens to a melanin-rich African woman if she dares to say something. Now, colorism is real. So if you are a melanin-rich African woman, you may find yourself demonized, marginalized, pathologized, all kinds of things. If it is that you belong as a man to a clique that I call the back room, and you make decisions, and then you have the resources to create a media house or publish or go into spaces and speak, and then because you are speaking, you are considered to be an authority, that can harm us. Those assassination attempts means that you are starved of oxygen, you are starved of economics, you will not have a place that you can go to, you can live, you can't eat. These things are real. I've heard women speak of places of war where African women are seen as sites of pleasure. So we're described as casualties of war. Men often, it may also be, women colluding, but men will satisfy themselves at the sight of a woman. A woman is invited to be horizontal. Dare she say no? There is a consequence. Dare she speak when the place is controlled by men and they practice not only misogyny, but misogynoir? We have a real challenge because the more you speak out against it, the more they pathologize you. These things are real. The idea of quantifying harm, I really like that is brought into the room, because the damage that's being done cannot be quantified by anyone who understands economics but doesn't understand spirit, or doesn't understand womanhood, doesn't understand personhood, doesn't understand plagiarism, doesn't understand hijacking, doesn't understand disrespecting populations and ancestors. They don't understand that because they operate in a place where the optics rule. And therefore, if I take a picture with you, or if I take a picture with someone who's considered to be of a certain elite, then I am also elite by association. The price that is paid by African women cannot be quantified, and certainly can't be quantified by a man. And also, the measure of a man should not be determined only by a man. The measure of a man should be influenced and informed by what women see. Because you got older doesn't mean you're an elder. Because you have a penis carrying meat suit, it doesn't make you a man. I think somebody mentioned, the blurring, the transition, the trans this, the trans that. You cannot be an African woman if you're an African man. You cannot understand what we understand. And it would serve our people very well if the African men who inhabit conflict of interest as a way of being, and you spoke to that, I think, beloved sister, if you are in civil society and also in state, then where is your allegiance? It's a very interesting dynamic. The casualty of this war goes beyond physical exploitation. It really it does. And yes, there are establishments of NGOs, but there are also establishments of organizations and titles and centers and institutes and this and that, because you are building an empire. And there is a fable or something that says the emperor has no clothes on, and the only person who spoke of that was a child who did not fall into the seduction, did not become mesmerized by the shiny things. African women are now speaking. The violence against women and girls must stop, not just regionally, globally, universally, ancestrally. It's spaces to come, because we are custodians. This doesn't belong to us. And the mighty, or so-called mighty, fall. And it has already happened. People have fallen. Peace. Peace.
We needed that moment of reflection. And I repeat what I shared earlier, that the images and commentary in this broadcast are those of the presenters and the ancestors that bless and guide our work. I'm just going to pause there for that one, because it's very important that we also look into the other element that persons may feel. What do we mean when we talk about the reparatory language that is used in some of the formations that have been put in place? What are we saying? And I hope that commentary is clear in regard to very strategic hijacking of our movement, not a movement, but our African, Black, West Indian, Caribbean movements, plural, and the historical context in which some of these activities have happened. And even as we're speaking of the importance of our sistren, our women, being at the center from inception of the development of any and everything, especially having to do with our families, our nations, our societies, our communities, our villages, our ethnic groups, our circles, our realms. That's just the right thing to do. That we are.
I love that you're smiling, but your words have fire. It is a wonderful
technique I learned. It's a technique I've learned from my centenarian mama. And I'm grateful that I have been able to do that, because sometimes when we are speaking, persons take the niceties in which we deliver and just attempt to placate what we're sharing. But this is something, as I've said, that's linked to a number of organizational entities. And beyond those that we've listed today, there are many others. It's very important that we begin to ask and decree at the same time. Yes, we're asking a variety of questions, but these aren't declarations. This is not a culmination of outcomes from the last webinar, seminar, conference, gathering, etc. These are decrees regarding African women leading, African women must lead. We are to completely remove any form of desecration, diabolical intentions, forms of demonization, and definitely any form of terrorism, violence, genocide, matricide, all of that, that is directed against African women and our girls. Would like to highlight, I'm saying African Queen Mother warriors, our children, our children's children for generations. That has been decreed as ceasing effective
Absolutely.
last month, because this is, you don't start saying you're doing all these international decades of for people of African descent around recognition, justice, and development, and you don't recognize us.
That's right.
Hmm.
That's right.
In development.
You better stop it. Cease and
See,
desist
that's that one.
without delay. Um,
That one.
what is the African Queen Mother Warriors? Sister Queen Esther, what is the solution? What because we could be considered to be
Hmm. Hmm.
angry black women. We could be considered to be, we've got a personal beef. Um, what 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 can what do you propose should be part of our way of being or our conversation going forward? Certainly for me, implementation of reports or
Hmm.
interrogation of any model or anything should be taken seriously,
Hmm.
and I don't know that that is what is happening. So
Hmm.
can you offer something so that people aren't just watching and saying, well, those women seem rather disgruntled. What happened?
Some angry black women.
Yeah, maybe somebody looked at them and didn't, whatever.
Yeah.
It's like, how come you so mad?
Yeah, I mean, exactly. And I was actually thinking about that we should provide some ways forward. And I would like to suggest that we fully develop this in our next conversation. But for now, I would just say part of the way forward, this is only part, is that we need to create spaces for genuine community participation of our people. Yeah, locally, nationally, internationally, regionally, within specific countries, wherever we are. Genuine. So models that I think are some of the best practice are people's assemblies. So we should be having African people's assemblies on African reparations wherever we are. Yeah. And that means where people like, some people would say town hall meetings. The town hall is a particular construct, but the idea that we're speaking to our people, we are sensitizing them, we are hearing from them, we are listening to their concerns, their everyday kind of struggles for survival, within which we have to be framing our remedies around repair. And in that, we must ensure that women's voices are centered and central. Because of that same point, how do you even begin to comprehend the harm of the Ma'angamisi in the three phases of chattel enslavement, colonialism, and contemporary neo-colonialism, if you are not recognizing and sensitive to how that harm is playing out today? And we've been speaking about that from the beginnings of our conversations. I think within that, we should, even these people's assemblies or other ways, that's just one way, but we should emphasize the importance of the best of our African values, African-centered knowledges on how we bring our communities together, looking at African-centered perspectives such as Ubuntu, ensuring that all the voices are recognized. We have to also look at how we're conducting our meetings. Who are we inviting into the space? Who are the so-called experts, which is a term that gets used a lot now in this space? Where are our ancestors here? Where are the spiritual and traditional leaders, cultural leaders who know about how to commune with our ancestors and ensure that they are also central. Because a lot of what we are doing, we're actually breaking, we're breaking taboos because we are not honoring ancestors, ancestral lineage and energy. And this is, this is specialist work, because you also have to be doing the work on yourself to be able to do that work for our people. In terms of your character, in terms of your reputation, in terms of just how you inhabit the earth, how you are being. It's not just an academic, it's not at all an academic exercise, or because someone has got certain qualifications after their name and has certain book knowledge. Not disregarding that in any way, because it can serve us. It depends on how we utilize it and what mind is really controlling that. I think we have to ensure that we look at the decision making, whose voices are being heard, whose voices are being amplified, what are they saying? How can we create decision making that is African centered, decision making by consensus? And that's where these people's assemblies could be quite useful, because even if somebody has some bright idea about a plan, how have you road tested this with the people? Only the people will be able to say to you whether that's policy solution that you are suggesting is going to be meaningful to them. Looking at holistic understandings of the harm and healing is important. And we have to recognize the spiritual and the cultural dimension. So we have to bring in our African epistemologies, our ways of knowing and being and existing, to know that the harm extends beyond the material realm, and it impacts us as peoples, as communities, as individuals on spiritual and cultural levels. And so we cannot just be focusing on so-called economic losses or quantifiable economic losses, but we also have to look at the losses to our heritage, our cultural traditions, our cultural practices, our knowledge systems, that is kind of creating imbalance and disorder and disharmony in the world. And also taking into consideration how intergenerational trauma, is manifesting, and find ways to address that. I think we need to hear from the people more. We need our people's testimonies. We need their stories. We need an emphasis on so-called oral histories, her stories, our stories, and also lived experience. That is a knowledge that is being discounted in a lot of the public discourse. We need to be valuing our oral traditions, valuing our elders, our community leaders, traditional leaders, and our knowledge keepers. Yeah, the knowledge on how we even engage in reparations discourse and policy framing and even plans that doesn't re-traumatize our people, because they are once again being silenced and marginalized. And we have to emphasize at all times our connection to ancestors, ancestresses, to our land, which actually forms our material cultures, to our sense of identity and well-being. These are some of the things that I think are part of the way forward, supporting the development of grassroots leadership and amplifying the voices of our communities who are still in resistance, creating mechanisms where we can ensure transparency and accountability in leadership, but also accountability around what we are representing and whom we are representing. And most of all, I think emphasizing ways in which we can empower our communities, not just our men, empower our women, and also the children. These are just some of the ways. And of course, we should explore some of these ways and much more in further versations.
And now that we've covered everything for this day, we can giving thanks for just the clarity of the actionable deliverables that we can explore. That's what I heard, was the actionable deliverables. Those that aren't familiar, hashtag actionable deliverables, because we have been in multiple fora where we've had these discussions, and the silencing is equivalent to that same form of erasure that we claim happens from the others.
Mm.
However, reparations, reparatory justice, restitution, repatriation, all of these elements are interfered with, not only from external sources, from internal sources as well. And I'm very grateful that that has been shared beyond what people refer to as diplomatic form. We're sharing it through a lens of being grounded in that principle, that very feminine principle, that very ancestral principle of Ma'at. And again, for those that aren't remembering what Ma'at, 4 letters: truth, justice, order, reciprocity, balance, divine righteousness, and harmony. You know, sobriety, propriety, of course, but those elements of 7. And this is also an opportunity, as you've shared, for persons to look at these different platforms, those that you are already in, those that you might be attempting to escape from because of that institutional machinery of erasure and forced invisibility, and the redevelopment of a form of trauma. You think you're in a room with your own people and you're ready to go and do that walk and be there. And then you get beat down spiritually, emotionally, psychologically, and to certain points, even physiologically, because it becomes very wearing, very tearing on our spiritual energy, yes, on our emotional ability to stay balanced. But it starts to affect your body, just physiologically. You just feel like you go to a session thinking you're going to gather and glean in energy, and you're putting out your energy, sharing your skills, talents, and expertise, and you just getting like beat up, mashed down. Or what I refer to as non-benevolent invisibility, where persons will hear what you're saying, but they're not listening, and they're not including that in their final rapporteur report at all.
Right, that's right. That's right.
So I think it's important that, again, we have created our own platform to be able to bring some of this truth to power to the forefront. And whether it's 1 million persons listening and viewing, or just the few that are here with us, we're always encouraging persons share the critiques, the empowering commentary, questions, recommendations as we begin to build, because we informally have started this at the 3rd Sunday of each month, and that may alter because based on our ability to keep these linkages tight and to implement. I hope persons were listening. I hope you were taking. I'm writing notes, and in this section, I just write in my notes too, for us to be able to look at what are the action elements of what we're saying. This is not a complaint session. And notice that we have been quite eloquent in our presentation. We're not going to call out everybody. We're not coming like street gang. We ain't doing like a drive-by. None of that. Right?
But we could do it.
We can. And we do it with fashion, style, dressed well, smelling fabulous, and quite professional, right? But our intention is to ensure the restoration of respect, the restoration of honorable engagement, and recognizing that in some of these spaces that we're referencing and that we have been quite familiarized as well as terrorized with them, sometimes it's not that we choose to be in them there. We know that if we weren't present, that our sistren, our brethren, our communities, our societies would never know what's really happening in the back room. And that's part of the reason why we keep bringing these types of conversations to the forefront. So that's why when we're speaking of African Queen Mother Warriors Rising, or AQMW Rising, we're using this as a platform. Yes, it's multimedia. And yes, sometimes we may have, and you might put some rockers in there, something to keep the energy of love, tranquility, and balance in the groundings. But don't think that we're coming to be soft. It's not a soft thing. Sometimes we're going to come very direct while we're being correct and accurate. And it's very important that persons know that we're offering some of the historical elements. Sometimes we're going to talk about things from a psychological frame of reference. Sometimes we will speak of things on body and wellness and oneness, right? We could do that too, right? We're going to be speaking on things that are very current, and we will give the historical or past context so the person recognize what we're speaking truth to power on right now. And because sometimes if we just want to talk about some of the horrific affairs, we can just share those links with you because these are things that are ongoing. What is happening to the African family is beyond a horror show. It is beyond the realms of dehumanization and degradation of the very groundings of our essence and our authority, our sovereignty, our power, our lands, our existence. And we have decreed.
We have had enough. How about that? We have had enough. And the axiology that has been offered to us by this versation is something that should be studied. I certainly will be watching this. I will come back to this and I will watch it because it will tell me what I need to do. We've been able to interact about the solutions, not just about the issues, but the solutions. And we've been able to consider, what do we implement? What do we actually do? We're not just writing about something. This is not academic. We are not academic. We may be academics, but we are not academic. We are very here as spirit manifest as African women, and we have had enough. It requires shared leadership, and it requires a strong leader to recognize, maybe I need to have a look at my leadership. Maybe I need to employ humility. Maybe I need to be prepared to listen to achieve what it is I say I want to achieve. I have to set aside ego. Why am I in the room with the same people all the time? Whether I am in Europe, whether I am over there, whether I am over here, I have the same people around me all the time. Am I giving favor to certain people, or am I honoring our ancestors? And am I also honoring our children so that our names can be called when libation is being poured? Am I betraying? Am I a traitor? Or am I a partner in the elevation of African people? I'm gonna mute my mic.
Absolutely. And can I just share a closing quote from none other than Amilcar Cabral, who I'm inspired a lot by. And it's a quote from the party directive that was developed in 1965. And he begins by stating that we should bear in mind that people are not fighting for ideas, for the things in anyone's head. They are fighting to win material benefits, to live better and in peace, to see their lives go forward, to guarantee the future of their children. So this struggle is a spiritual one, a cultural one, but it's also a material one in terms of our existence on Mother Earth. And it ends by saying we must practice, and I'm going to paraphrase because some of the language was just centering men, but we must practice revolutionary democracy in every aspect of our life, party life. Every responsible member must have the courage of their responsibilities, exacting from others a proper respect for their work, and I would add contributions, and properly respecting the work of others. But this is the part that I really love, and I think provides a foundation for many of our versations. Hide nothing from the masses of our people. Tell no lies. expose lies whenever they are told, mask no difficulties, no mistakes, no failures, claim no easy victories. And that really speaks to the divine humility that is required of all servant leaders,
Wow.
especially around this struggle to effect and secure holistic repair and full repair as a people, past, present, and future. Sure.
Ashe, ashe.
We will return. As is customary, as we begin to get to that space of transformation, because it's not a closing, it is not an end, but that transformative realm moving off of this podcast broadcast and preparing for our future one, which is tentatively set for the third Sunday of February. And I think this is a grand time for us to, just encourage persons again, 8 a.m. Atlantic, 12 noon across the Atlantic pond, February 16th, same time and same location. And if something is to stimulate an earlier engagement, we will let the community and our people know. I would be remiss because, as was referenced in the beginning, these commentaries, this versation is grounded on a very organic realm of interaction of African Queen Mother Warriors. If you'd like to know more information, African Queen Mother Warriors at gmail.com. African AFRAKAN. Keep that in mind. Again, AFRAKAN. African Queen Mother Warriors, all lowercase, no spaces, at gmail.com. Persons can easily reach out to Sister Doctor as well as Sister Queen Esther and myself on various social media. We are beyond transparent. If you need to know what we think, what we're saying, you will find us accordingly in respective media networks. But I'd like to highlight an excerpt from the original April 2015 statement of African Queen Mother Warriors, where we were formed. And I quote, "In unity with our brothers and sisters of humanity, African Queen Mothers and Revolutionary Women Warriors have united in order to have our voices heard by publishing this international statement. The issues raised herein are being shared in the spirit of love, peace, harmony, reciprocity, truth, justice, order, and balance. Through African consensus, this statement calls for revolutionary corrective actions for the end of willful disrespect, marginalization, exclusionism, intellectual warfare, internalized sexist terrorism, misogyny, pathological patriarchy, and genocidal violence against our African women anywhere and everywhere, particularly within the organizational and institutional frameworks of these organizations, including summits, congresses, conventions, and conferences. In any gathering, it is imperative that we not only call upon the names of our benevolent and venerated ancestors, but that we ceremoniously invite their presence in the most appropriate and respectable manner." End quote. With that, my sister queens, I am so honored, as is customary, to be in your presence in this virtual space. And we look forward to being on those spaces in our backgrounds where our ancestral sanctuary lands, governed by the sovereignty and the ancestral intelligences that we are all a part of, will facilitate our next moves. Any closing commentary before we close out? Oh, I love the silence. We're grateful. We're grateful. We're grateful. I think part of what we can share, and it was something that I was looking at earlier, and prayerfully the sound will be up and running, and then we'll put on our trademark video piece. I think in terms of time, we'll probably just move straight to that. We're comfortable. I'm really grateful. Again, as we started, I'm really grateful for us to be able to give thanks and praise to the One Most High, all the infinite source names we use. We live each day daily for the One Most Divine. Again, all the names that are venerated. And we shall do it tomorrow just as we do it today. And again, when you see any of us, recognize that we are intentionally carrying respectfully our venerated, most benevolent, and quite revolutionary African ancestors. So it's not just the one of us, it's the multitude. Duanter.
This next one is dedicated to all the kings and the queens and the children of the African diaspora. Always remember to keep the fire blazing. Always. Keep your circle tight. Keep your meditation right. Okay. Queen Mary, where you going to burn? Queen Mary, where you going to burn? Don't ask me nothing, time. Just fetch the match and light. Bars in jailhouses, where we're going to burn. Don't ask me nothing, time. Just fetch the match and light. Bars in jailhouses, where we're going to burn. Run it! In the name of the queens who fought before me, warrior kings, the ones who made history, I sing praises no matter where I stand, no matter where I am. An eye for an eye. Gone are the days when we sit silent while they abuse I and I. Rebuke bad mind, jealousy and then easy. Light a fire in them mine and them plantation. Matilda run get Agnes, tell her she must come. It's a revolution, tell her she must come. Fetch the match and Nile bunny down, an eye for an eye. Gone are the days when we sit silent while they abuse I and I. Rebuke bad mind, jealousy and envy have no place in clean heart. We burn it out, we burn, he said, she said. Burn it, crab in a bucket mentality we burn it. Social injustice and poverty we burn it. Miseducation of the black man burn it. Hard work and determination is what make me. Nobody fight down nobody else. I said Jah pick me, Jah pick me. Yeah, I said Jah pick me. The truth is the fire time we burn it, burn it, burn it, burn it. Till the root, find the truth, flip it upside down. Nowhere to hide, nowhere to run. Set the place on fire, burn the whole thing down. Burn it, burn it, burn it, burn it. Sit and go home, till the root, find the truth, flip it upside down. Nowhere to hide, nowhere to run. Set the place on fire, burn the whole thing down. Burn it, burn it, burn it, burn it. Sit and go burn. Let it and go burn.
Give thanks and praise, give thanks and praise. My sisters, I think we have covered what we need to. Giving thanks, blessings, Hotep.
Hotep.
Blessings.